What's going on, everybody? Welcome to RiDetroit Weekly. I am your host, Jason. That's right, Jason Hall, the Jason of all trades is what they call me on Instagram. Wow, today is our 11th show, and we are 11 subscribers away. There's too much numerology going on. Last week we did our 10th episode on the 10th. Now we're doing our 11th episode, and we're 11 subscribers away from 100. Are you picking up on this? Are you a conspiracy theorist? Do you believe this? The numerology, it's always working out. That means you need to go subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. You can go and hit that subscribe button, or please consider it. That's the joke. People always say that, but I'm saying, please hit the subscribe button. We are 11 people away from 100, and at 100, we will be doing a giveaway. Wow, like I said, back in the old days when I was just like, what can we do? I said I would give away $50, to one of those 100 people. So I'm still gonna give away the $100 unless I got a really good suggestion. If somebody thinks that $50 should go somewhere else, like to a service industry person that's working, or somebody who just needs that $50, you tell me, and I will take that $50 to that person, all right? So you can either have it if you need it, no questions asked, but if you think somebody else needs that cash, I would love to give it away, all right? So, when I get a subscriber, I will hit that bell. It's weird because it takes my headphones and makes it so I can't hear you, so hopefully you can hear me. Last week we had an amazing guest. I mean, we always have amazing guests. Christian Grant came on, one of my connects from Grand Rapids, man. Sticking along my theme of strong, powerful black women, she came on and she really talked about the entrepreneurial spirit and what it takes to be a developer and really work on bigger projects. We met working on Art Prize, and she was in charge of one of the biggest art festivals, in the country. So if you have some time, by all means, go back and check that video and all the other videos. Once again, they exist in the archives of the RiDetroit YouTube channel. Also with my Murals in the Market stuff. So any of those interviews of the amazing artists that exist that I do live every Saturday, you can go check those out too. All right, so without further ado, man, this guest right now, she is one of the people that I've admired for a long time because she has her hand in a little bit of everything, I first got, she came on my radar prior to her working with Q-Line. Then she did some work with Q-Line, but now she's working on some stuff of her own, so we're gonna get into that. Ladies and gentlemen, Sommer Woods, what is happening, girlfriend?
Jason?
I'm so happy to see. I start this show out, and every week I'm always nervous. I can't lie, because I'm not cut for this. I just do it because we can. I'm not a TV person. So I still get nervous, but then as soon as I see a smile, and that smile right there, I'm good. I don't even need, I could just let you talk. So
like you're a natural. I'm listening to you like, okay, Jason, you better come on now.
Nah, stop this. Stop. Trust me, it took a good year to get even this comfortable, and it takes a team of people. So let's get on to you. Enough about me. What is happening right now? How are you?
Man, I'm blessed. What we say, blessed and highly favored. No, I'm doing well. I am, doing some new stuff as you said in the beginning. I have kind of been in all these different areas and opportunities within the city of Detroit, and so that's no different to now. So doing some full-time entrepreneurship, and really excited about it.
So, like I said, I met you working when you were working really right before Q-Line. You were heavily involved in that. You're still consulting with Q-Line. I've always been interested in the angle as a bicyclist. I wanted to ask you, how were bicycles sort of in that thought process of when we start building this M1? Were they considered at the beginning, or was it sort of like, oh yeah, we need to add bikes to this? I mean, I'm curious because the M1 project just sort of popped up. I don't know anything about it. Tell me something about it.
So there was obviously a lot of environmental studies and things that went into the work. It actually, a lot of the conversation started like in 2006, 2007, right after Super Bowl.
Okay.
And there was the conversations of what are some alternative modes of transportation? I mean, us being the Motor City. Everyone wants to be in a car, which I know that's what that's what we know about. But we have to do a better job of talking about public transportation and other modes of transportation. And historically, that hasn't really been the case, right? Growing up, you would see somebody at the bus, when people are like, oh, he at the bus, he can't get my number. Like, what, like it's that thought process sometimes of us just being such a car town that is really how do you shift the conversation and what it looks like in terms of public transportation. And so Q Line was that. I mean, there were many groups that were consulted and brought to the table. I'm sure some groups felt they should have been more engaged than others. The cycling community, was a part of it. They expressed, their concerns. And as you know, as an avid cyclist, and I'm not an avid, but I do my thing. Sometimes the cyclist enthusiast wants all the roads, all about them, and not anybody else sometimes. And it's a matter of trying to find that balance. And so I think with Q Line, it's an opportunity to talk about multiple modes, because it's not just the streetcar, but it's DDOT, it's SMART, it's MOGO, it's people walking, people on their own bicycles, really trying to get people to think about transportation and just mobility different. And I think that's one of the things that M1 Rail tried to do, still tries to do, but it's a very hard nut to crack in this market.
And so for those that don't know, M1 is our light rail. Is that what is considered a light rail? And it starts at West Grand. I mean, what are the parameters of it exactly? It goes downtown and ends at West Grand.
Correct. So it is a streetcar circulator. It actually starts downtown and it goes north to the New Center North End area. And then it goes back. The idea when the system was first thought of, a lot of it was for it to be a part of a bigger system, a larger system. But again, as we talk about transportation and the taxes, the tax structure, in order to get those things, you have to start somewhere. And so this was one of those projects that actually has a federal match that is attached to it, that there is a program, that there is a transportation entity infrastructure that is connected into M1 Rail. There is a federal match that is a part of our deal. But again, we got to get people to understand and believe what that is in order to be a part of a bigger ecosystem of transportation, in order to get the tax, the Regional Transit Authority, the tax that we haven't passed as a region, in order to really talk about that holistically. And that's how M1 Rail falls into that. It's just a small piece. It is not the solution. People want us to be, but we are not the solution to everything. We are just a part of the conversation of the transit solution.
And I say that people say to me, we know, they say, oh, it only goes to West Grand, it only goes to downtown. I say, if you live in Detroit, downtown, it makes sense to me. If I'm downtown and I want to go shopping along Woodward, M1 is that vehicle that provides that. It is the piece. Like, people think it was the answer. And like you said, it's not. It is just part of the answer. And so that's what I try to get to people.
No, and it's true. I mean, even as it relates to just trying to find all the interconnectivity of it, right? Even we met with the cycling community when we were building the streetcar, there were multiple communities we reached out to when we were talking about even building, because the streetcars were made in here in U.S. in Brookville, Pennsylvania, Brookville Manufacturing, and we even adjusted to make sure that we had more bicycle racks in the inside of the vehicle. We adjusted for those. The Warrior on Wheels, which is a great organization that advocates for those in wheelchairs and other types of mobility. And they were like, hey, what does that look like in terms of our wheelchairs being able to come in and the space for that? So we did take all those things into consideration with the intentions of, okay, if we can have, because that was the concern, there's only 2 racks on the bus, how can we get more? So we did take those things into consideration, again, to just be a piece of the puzzle, not the solution, but to fit into all of the transit options as well.
No, exactly. I commend you on what you guys have done with what you've been working with. Like I said, people are really sometimes unreasonable. I sometimes feel like I have this ability to see the bigger picture. And sure, if I wanted to sit back and talk about regional transit, I might be upset about some things, but we have to make steps in order to, gap these bridges. You know what I'm saying? So, I like I said, I love what you guys are doing over there. So, Thank you for filling me in. I'm just moving on because, you know my thing. I don't like to talk about too much old stuff when you got new stuff. And you got a lot of new stuff going down. Where do we begin? You know what I mean? Where you got, well, no, I'm gonna let you, where do we begin? So now you've transitioned. You're a consultant for Q-Line, but you're doing your own thing. It's 2021. A lot of people are making that pivot, and it's your turn. Where are we going?
So for me, the pivot has been in the thought process, the brain for a minute. I've been off and on an entrepreneur since 2006, right after Super Bowl ended. I was a full-time entrepreneur for a minute. And during that time, the market, 2008, 2009, we had a market hit, and we felt it. That's when the housing market obviously impacted this region, all of those things. But for me, it impacted my business, and my business that I'm actually going to be doing full time as a part of it is an event logistics and communication production company. And so I'm excited to do that full time now. But one of the things that I learned from that first go round is you can't just have one venture, right? You have to have multiple, and you have to find ways to do some capacity building, right?
Yep.
So when I was younger, as I'm sure you can appreciate, you want to do it all. You like, oh, I can do this, this, and this. Now at 43, I'm like, let me see who can do my accounting. Let me see trying to find that capacity building. So it does free me up to do other things because that business, event logistics and communication, has been hit again with COVID, right? People are not doing events like they were doing. Now, right. I'm excited because, I'm hoping it's going to be like the roaring 20s when everybody was kicking it. You know what I mean? Like when we get up out of here, I'm hoping business gonna be bumping. But that's one thing I'm going to be doing. The other vertical is the beginning February 1st. We announced partnership. My business partner, Dr. Michelle Lewis Watts. We worked together on Super Bowl. That we launched an equity and inclusion consulting firm. So there is a lot of conversation about what does equity look like. Black Lives Matter, all of that, right? Okay, does it really matter? What does that look like? So this is the interesting thing is people feel like this is something new. I've got a couple of messages like, oh, I'm so excited you about to get in this space. And I'm like, I've been in this. You know what I mean? I was every space I've ever occupied. I have made sure that it has been representative of people that look like myself, different things that I can associate with in terms of gender, in terms of being from a Detroiter, going to an HBCU, being Black, being a woman. Like those are all, that's how it's in my DNA, and everywhere that I go, I try to make sure that's a part of it. So for us, that's our, that's our thing. So that's called Woods and Watts. My first company is called Solution Architects. And then this company, one of my business is called Woods and Watts Effects. And then my last business that I'm excited about, we haven't launched formally. We're in the infrastructure stage right now is my best friend and I, Jennifer Smith, we're going to start a podcast.
Right. Okay.
So we're going to start a podcast and it's called Black People Shit. And
yes.
It's so funny because people hear it, you're like, and even when we were trying to write the content, my best friend's like, well, do we spell it out? I'm like, yeah, shit, that's what it is. Like, and the idea of that podcast is to talk about things and to have a transparent conversation with each other, with subject matter experts, to talk about things that impact us individually as Black people, right? And so how can we talk about that and learn from each other so that we're able to have things that we can learn from each other? If it's facing our own mortality, or if it's talking about infertility, a lot of times Black women, and what that is, we don't feel comfortable. And even, people's husbands and fathers who are suffering in silence because of that, how can we normalize some of these conversations as Black people? So those are my three things.
And don't say, you're like, those are my three things. Those are three big things. Because everyone, I'm like, I want to ask you, So let's go back to equity and inclusion first. I think that's clearly one of the most important topics that is on the table right now. A lot of the interviews that I do, and it's funny because all these companies, they have this person they're hiring now to be in charge of equity and social media and how that works. And my question to them is always, what the hell does that mean? What are you know what I mean? What does that mean? And a lot of times they're really just putting that position into effect as a trigger because equity is an important conversation to have right now. But a lot of people don't even really understand what equity is. Can you talk for 1 second about equity and what that means in this sector?
So equity in transportation, that's a loaded question, Jason. That's a very loaded question. Transportation, as it is in a lot of other cities, in states, it comes down to two things we don't like to talk about. One is race, and the other is the social economics, right? People try to make it the same. It's not the same. It's two different things, right? Okay. And so that conversation about equity within transportation is how are the people that are transit dependent, that need it, how are their voices being incorporated into the conversation, which is important. Also talking about the choice rider, right? How can we learn from other cities, newer cities like Denver and Seattle that have found different ways to have a different conversation about the choice rider as well. But also there's also this fine line about transportation and economic development. And that is true, but we have to be careful about that because it does kind of open up this Pandora's box conversation about gentrification and development and what that looks like. So equity is in the transportation space is having access to all modes, understanding, even if that includes the car. We know that our insurance is, their policies here in Michigan, although they tweaked it a little bit, not a lot, but it is still an issue and a barrier for poor Black and brown people to be able to have a car that's insured, right? For them to have, healthcare coverage, those types of things within those spaces. We know as it relates to cycling, I know this is always a controversial thing, is something that is, and that's one of the things I love about what you did with Slow Roll, is that it opened up a conversation to talk about cycling in a different light, right? For all different types of people to get on their bike and explore the city of Detroit, that was great, but it also had a different conversation about who is the cyclist. Well, let's be honest. Outside of that, there really is no other medium that shows the cyclist as a different, as an all, everybody is a part of it type of thing. There is still the perception of, it's sometimes reality, right? Like there's still some conversations when you talk about equity and we talk about the bike lanes and people say, well, they put all this effort into, how does that relate to my sidewalks that I can't walk, right? My sidewalks are jacked up, they're not clear, so I gotta walk in the street. But we can put a lot of emphasis in, we're gonna put in these bike lanes because we gotta have them and everybody uses them. Well, okay, that can be the case, but it still has to grow. It still has to be a bigger conversation. We still gotta have some honest conversations about who's leading the conversation about cycling and pathways and pedestrian sidewalk. I mean, that is what equity is. You can't have the same usual, quite frankly, dominant culture to basically monopolize that conversation because it's not going to be an all-inclusive thought process of how transportation and mobility should look like. So that is how equity plays out into transportation, that we don't necessarily, for the RTA to not have passed, that says a lot. You know what I mean? That's it. And it's not just, but it would be those conversations where you would say, hey, but the narrative would be, well, I don't want people coming to my neighborhood and my crime go up. Why would you think your crime goes up? Because you now have greater accessibility to a suburban neighborhood because of white flight and everything that comes with that to the suburbs and still what comes to that. And that's equity, right? It's trying to change the lens in the conversation about how all of these different buckets are all in voices that's included. In transportation, it got a long ways to go in terms of equity, for sure.
And really when not to talk about Slow Roll, but when we started Slow Roll, what became important to me is that it did give people of color a voice. Like you said, up until that moment, I really feel like people of color weren't even considered bicyclists. you know, we had events that happened in Detroit, but when those events happened, it were predominantly one group of people. And so I used to always say to people of color, now this is your opportunity to be a part of the conversation. And when I do see people from the clubs getting in that conversation, it definitely makes me feel great about the fact that we've opened the door for us to have more of a voice in that.
No, for sure. And that's important that you opened it, but it's also important that it continues to maintain. And the unfortunate part is you had such a mass, it was a mass movement, right? So it had more weight, it had more presence that sometimes when you don't have those things, you have a couple of people in some pockets, you know, like Mama Cassandra, you know, and a couple of these other bike groups that's out here doing their thing, but it doesn't have that same. And so you're still having some of the what you can still look at a lot of tables that's talking about this, and it is not a lot of people of color. It's not Black people.
Right.
It's not. I mean, it's not. And so, how do we continue to make sure that we demand to be at all of the tables? But it shouldn't. It should be a part of how we do the work. It should be about how the city plans. It should be about how the state plans. It should be about how federal transportation entities plan, to have all of those voices at the table to really come up with a plan that is going to appeal and benefit everybody and change the conversation collectively, to also make it more sexy to talk about transportation. You know, we don't, it's not sexy here. You go to certain places, you say you got a car, they like, what? Like,
Right.
that's cool. But we don't make transportation sexy. We have to do a better job of different modes of mobility to be sexy.
No, you're right. You're right. I talk about often, the bike is still connected with this weird, like when I was 16, you got rid of your bike because if you rode a bike, you were like a nerd. You know what I mean? But like you said, in other places, they're not raised like that. You go to Portland, kids are on the back of bikes until they can ride their own bikes, and then they become part of the culture. I'm just trying to work right now. My work is to get people to understand that, first of all, we're talking about coming to the table. We got to explain to them that there's a table to begin with. You know, a lot of times, I tell you, we talk about it all the time. I tried to hire a mechanic that was a person of color, and it was very difficult to find one because this is one of those weird gates that they've sort of kept to themselves. So now it's up to me to invent that so we can be a part of what's at the table.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, that is very, very key. And a lot of times within it is, you know, it's the exposure, but it's also the education. So while, you know, different entities can talk about, hey, we have the bike lanes in place for everybody, but as you and I know, you know, growing up in the city, you were taught to ride your bike facing the track, like, so you could see them coming, right? Because vehicular traffic didn't know how to coexist and commingle with cyclists. So you had to look. And so even when people tout the idea about we got bike lanes and everybody can be about it, and you know, sometimes I'm giving some of these, you know, cyclists some real side eye because it comes from a space of white privilege. And I'm gonna tell you straight up, right? And so to that point, I'm like, okay, well, let's take it to the next level. We're gonna talk about these. What's the education that's being put out there to the African Americans that were raised in this community to ride a bike a different way so that they know how to use the bike lanes, so they know how to be safe in the bike lanes. But if we're not talking about that, then we're not going to use them, because on my block, everybody, we got bike lanes on Jefferson, but everybody look like me and you, they on the sidewalk. Hey, sis, they not in the bike lane. Because again, what was the education about that? To let us, because that's not how we were taught. You know what I mean? And there's still some levels of anxiety. You know, even when I'm riding my bike in these secure lanes, you like, you know, Lord Jesus, because we have not tried to change the culture, but instead what has been happening is that they just put the table up, say this is what we're going to do. So to your point, we don't know the table that's here, but they put the table up and then want to put the lens on. This is equitable because people that don't have cars, they can, I'm calling BS on, I'm calling flag on the flag. Because if that's what it's about, then what is the next step to make sure that you're getting into those people that you try to use as a part of this narrative conversation? You know what I'm saying? So I think it is key to figure out how can we collectively just change the conversation about mobility and have honest conversations that a lot of times with equity and inclusion, it's the transparency and it's being honest. And a lot of people don't want to do that. That's
Right.
very hard, challenging for people to do that.
Yeah, no, that's the reality of it. We're living in this place where a lot of people don't want to accept the reality, and that's once again why I do this show. I'm glad you feel comfortable enough to talk about white privilege, because this is a space where we can talk about real things. And trust me, again, I'm involved heavily in a industry that is heavily built off of expensive bikes, white privilege, ownership, and that doesn't trickle down to the communities. And that's what we're really trying to do, is break down a lot of the walls that exist. And this show is doing it. And we're gonna do it on your show too. So let's talk about the podcast. We done talked about it. So do you know how you're gonna structure the podcast? Is it gonna be like different rooms, or how are we gonna get in this? Or is it a chat board? We just go at it? Have you thought about any of this?
We're just on a baseline of like, what platform? Like, we were gonna do it in person. One of my mentees has a really cool studio that, we were like, how can we also promote, different Black-owned businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a part of it, one of my mentees is the owner of Plant Economy, which has all the different pots and stuff that are around Black cultural reference and just cultural references. And so he has a cool little place that we were thinking about using. But then with COVID, we were like, well, we're going to probably do a similar platform as you have here that has the visual as well as the audio that we can do. But the idea is going to be, myself and my best friend, who are going to be the hostesses or the hosts of the show. And we're going to bring on subject matter experts that they can kind of, offer some perspective. So we talk about, the topic is Black people and insurance, right? We don't necessarily understand life insurance and term policies and disability insurance, like all these different things. And then when our family members, pass on, we're like, oh, we thought it was, what was, just trying to have conversations about mortality that we don't do a good job on. You can ask your mom or your grandmother, like, just ask them a simple stuff like, what happened when do you want to be cremated or buried? They like, I don't want to talk about that right now. And you're like, well, we got to talk about it, And some of us are a little bit more open, talk to my father, and he's like, oh yeah, no, put me in the cheapest box you could find. So it's really just trying to allow us to broach the conversation with each other to say, wow, I never thought about that, or how can I talk about that? Or, and then having some fun with it, being light, right? Like one of the topics we want to talk about is Black women and facial hair. That is a thing with our.
Wait, what? Black women and facial hair.
Listen, Jason, it is a situation, brother.
I didn't know that. I mean, I know it exists, but I didn't know it was a topic-worthy situation.
Listen, sisters is out here waxing, shaving, and then you got all these hair marks on your cheek. Let me tell you something. Everybody know you might have an auntie, a grandmama auntie that got that mustache.
Right.
Come on, Jason, let's talk about it. Right? But I'm just saying, there's a solution. So I would like to bring my dermatologist on, who basically helped me through the process to do the laser hair removal. Like, I really wasn't hip. I was talking to one of my girlfriends where I was like, dang, girl, your hair is like, because I'm just blunt like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, dang, girl, your hairs are gone. What happened? What happened, girl? What happened? And just having that transparent conversation was helpful for me. Like now I don't have all the marks on my face. Here I am thinking I'm doing something good. The guy I was dating at the time was like, no, I felt them pricklies.
See, he really liked you, because I could have never said that. I would have just been like, well, that's just is what it is until it's an awkward moment.
But that's my point, in the sense of how do we help each other? Like, if I wouldn't have just asked her, and if my friend wouldn't have just told me, like, I went to this is what I looked for, this is what it doesn't cost as much as you think it is. Your skin is gonna look better. I can look at pictures now and look at how my chin and my face is so clear in comparison to when I was doing waxing or shaving, just because I didn't really know. So it's those types of things, right? To make it a little bit more of that you can be transparent in your own shit, right?
Yep.
For
Yep.
people to realize, but it's specific to Black people because our hair real coarse and thick. It's real coarse and thick.
I
So
love
it's
it.
those the topics, you know what I mean, that we want to talk about. That you can be transparent in your own shit, that hopefully other people will be able to learn in their own shit.
I love it. I love it. Just like that topic alone, I could probably I can't be in on it, but I could listen to it because it fascinated me just that fast. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're right. I never thought about it being such because I always like you said I got an aunt. I'm like your mustache is thick, but I thought she was the only. I mean, maybe my aunt was the only one with a man's mustache.
Listen,
I'm gonna tell you, my aunt at Winter, she got one. You think I got a beard? She got one.
And for some of us, it is a part of, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a part of our culture of who we are as Black women. That is a part of it. But for some of us, you might want a different look. And I'm cool with the sisters that's out here with listen, sis, do it. I'm with it. But it's also the other conversation that maybe for some of us, we don't know. Right. Or for some of us that are trying to do it other ways, and it can be a much healthier situation, on your face and skin. So, but no, it's a situation. I bet you we was to take a poll. How many people, aunties, mamas, or grandmamas, who had that thickness?
Right.
Because that's how we're made. That's the beauty of who we are. Is Black women that I love. But there are alternative options if people, want to look at those, and let's talk about it.
Like I said, man, I'm already hooked on this show and it ain't even happened yet. I would just be there to listen. You know what I'm saying? Just in this brief amount of time. And it is about having it all comes down to having a comfortable space to be yourself and talk about the real things in life. And sometimes we need safe spaces like that. When people get upset when we say we need a safe Black space, they don't get that. They think that we mean that we don't like white people or we don't want to interact. But we need a place where we can talk to each other, where we understand each other without judgment.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I always talk about that even with my high school. I went to Mercy High School, and there was all these conversations about the cafeteria, and the Black girls sat in the left corner, and the Chaldean and Arabic sisters sat in the other corner, and then our South Asian sisters sat over here, like in the middle kind of front, and then the white girls kind of filled in all around. And people always say it's so segregated and it was like, it's also, we're in a school that these communities of color are not they're not the dominant, they're not the majority. And so when they go to their classes, when they go to extracurricular activities, they're among everybody. And so that during those, 7 to 3 o'clock time frame, it's okay to have a safe space for you to talk to people you relate in similarities. And it never was like I couldn't go sit with the white girls, or white girls could come sit with the Black girls. Or it wasn't like I didn't go sit with the Arab and the Chaldean sisters. Like, you just do what you do. You know what I mean? It's more of making sure that people can, to your point, be okay with these safe spaces of cultural connections, or, gender connection, or sexual orientation connection, that we want to be in these safe spaces to have these conversations. And then we can still be with everybody else, or those people should feel okay to ask other cultures about their spaces. But you're right. People look at that and they like, oh, we got certain Black people shit that we just can't talk about. Right. You know what I mean? We need to share with each other in order for us to be stronger. And I do believe that.
No, that's what's up. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that, because a lot of times, like I said, I'm that guy in the room that's like, look, man, Black people need an outlet. We need to be able to, do our thing. And a lot of times I'm in that room that doesn't look like me because of and so I come across a certain way, but I'm trying to impress upon people that it's not about us not wanting to be a part of everything. It's just, like I said, like you said, we got shit we just need to talk about that just happens between what we do. You know what I'm saying? No. I tell a funny story. I used to work over at, I used to work at a TV station. And one day I was talking about how my mama keeps her heat up at 80 degrees. And all the white people were like, what? And I was like, yeah, man, that's some Black people stuff. We, what's the average? We keep our heat like 70, 75. And everybody was like, what? We keep ours at like 55, and we just put a hoodie on and some socks. And I was like, man, yeah, that's wild. But that was the first time I ever experienced a situation where I could talk about cultures being different, but it being acceptable. And I think we just got black people shit, like keeping the heat up. That's just what we do. That's just there's no explanation.
We got a whole litany, and then sometimes the black people shit is the heat might not be as high, right? But you can't turn it on till November 1st, so you better layer up. You know what I'm saying? You like, it's 5 degrees outside. I don't care. It's not November 1st. Put your coat on, sit your ass on the couch with all them layers. You know what I'm saying? You might not be able to sit in the living room on that furniture. You know what I'm saying?
Hey. You can't sit in the living room on that furniture.
Because you can't, it is just certain things when you think about the beauty of different cultures. And that's what I love about the idea of us learning other cultures and embracing our own cultures versus the thought process of, we're all the melting pot. No, we're not. You know what I mean? We all our own individual that brings things to this pot of gumbo. And unless we can appreciate the taste of that shrimp and that sausage and that good roux, like everything is a part of it, but you got to be able to come unapologetically black, come unapologetically Arabic, come unapologetically a woman, come unapologetically as a Polish descent, come out, like all these different things that we don't necessarily embrace or encourage because people think that they're going to look at you a different way, or here come the black people, they always got some shit to say. Yeah, no, we do. We
That's just what it is. That's just what it is. No, we do. That's what we do.
Right, because I was raised with black women that always had some shit to say, so I got some shit to say.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Sommer, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Before, I always ask, okay, so one question before, since we're on the topic, where do you keep your garbage can in your house?
Oh, in my kitchen, off to the side. You talking about, is it inside? No, it's outside. It's right there on the edge of my
That's another one of those differences. I was at work one day. Everybody who was white, I know, I ain't saying it like that, they keep their garbage can under the sink.
Underneath the sink. And the funny thing is that the black people that I do know that do that is because it was a part of, like, in their suburban home, and it was made into it, and they got the drum. Yeah, so I tease my friends like, oh, now you brand new because you had your garbage can.
Yeah, like I said, we gonna keep our stuff away from stuff, but they keep, it's right, and I laugh about it. Like we need to write a book on all the differences that exist that are just cultural differences that are sometimes funny. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, when people come to my house, the first thing they say is, damn, it's hot in here. I'm like, what? I'm comfortable as hell. And they be like taking layers off. I'm like, don't touch that dial. That's going to stay at 78. Don't touch that.
Exactly. You don't have a little note. You ain't got a little note that say don't touch. No little note.
Don't do that. You got it on lock. Sommer, anything you want to say before I let you go? I mean, this was amazing. I love this whole transaction, but what's going down? Anything you want to say?
Listen, I just want to continue, listen, I wish we could breathe. I know your slow roll was so massive and it blew up and it just was too much, but I just want to continue. I just wanted to, say to you just to continue to do your thing. You know what I mean? To stand in the spaces that a lot of, Black people and marginalized communities are not able to be a part of, and to stand in the gap of that, and to make sure that we do know that those tables are there, and to continue to just speak truth to power, especially within this space of cycling, and continue to just call it out for what it is. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate continuing to learn from you, as well as continuing to find ways to partner up with you on different things that may come our way in the future.
Man, you have to end it like that. Now I gotta go cry in the corner, man. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be like, go to my website, and you're supposed to.
If anything, COVID has taught me, it has really taught me to define what community building is, and it has made me redefine what that is. So I appreciate you.
I love it. I love it. And just because I'm not working with Slow Roll Amir don't mean I'm not thinking about something. So I got something worked out for the community that's going to bring us together on bikes at least a couple times a year. So I'm still there. I'm going to let you know what's up.
Okay. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you much.
All right. Thank you, Sommer. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right. Peace.
Man, This smile every week is genuine. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, everything that just happened just brightened my day. It taught me so much. And that's what we're just here to do. You know, there's the saying, each one teach one. And every week I just try to bring people here so we can just share information and each one teach one. Not to get all crazy sentimental, because I will start crying. But let me make sure that you subscribe to what we do, man. Please hit the subscribe button. We're 11 away from giving away this money to somebody. Somebody's gonna get some money. And then once we get to 100, the next goal is 500. So we're gonna need everybody to kick in. We're gonna need you to hit those share buttons, talk about all the good stuff that we're doing so we can hit that 500 and keep growing and keep giving the messages like, you know, Sommer talked about. I just try to do good. So as long as y'all keep coming, I'll keep working on this. Next week's guest, man. I keep trying to get guests. So the show is about bikes, trust me. But we're in a time right now where there's a lot of relevant topics. So I could talk all day about bikes, but really right now, my next guest is Chip Amoy. He's the Director of Sustainability at Henry Ford Health Systems. We're gonna talk about, you know, what's going on during this pandemic and how they're dealing with it, and really get some insight into what we can be doing, you know, in this big curve, you know, with the vaccinations and things. And Chip is a bike rider. We actually met up on Mackinac when I did the slow roll up there. Chip and I wanted to do our own fast roll around the island, but it was rainy, but we still connected on that. We're both bike lovers. So next week, Chip will be on. I want to thank my sponsors, as usual, Loomis Helmets. You'll see them over my shoulder with the RiDetroit going down. Griffin Claw Brewing. Of course, how can I even stutter on that? Electric Avenue Bikes, the home of RiDetroit, 3613 Woodward. By all means, if you want to stop by, we do this show live. You can come hang out and watch it, as long as it's not too many people and you got a mask and you are under the COVID rules. I'd love to have you hang out. American Cycle and Fitness, they just got a bunch of bikes in. So all that bike shortage stuff that everybody was worried about, it is slowing down. So make sure you go out to one of your local ACFs. They got 8 locations. You can definitely check them out. Royal Oak, Walled Lake, Grosse Pointe, Grand Ledge. Check them out online, AmericanCyclingFitness.com. Go get yourself a bike. I want to thank Wingman Water. Just got a message from them. They heard my cries of hydration. And so I want to thank them. They're going to be bringing some product over here. And last but not least, the hardest working man in the nitro coffee business. I'm going to say what's up to my people over at Tap Beverages for providing the Purple Power Up, which is our signature plant-based energy drink that we keep on tap at the shop. So you can definitely come by and try that out. Hopefully, if it gets going well enough, maybe we'll can it, make a couple dollars. Who knows, all right? I want to thank Anthony, Alpha, the crew, everybody from coming in. Thank you for coming back for this week. Did I forget anything? Good to go? It's a wrap. Peace. See you guys next week.